Welcome to the Stone Ridge 1965 group and a new Teatime Zoom rendezvous. Today is October 26, 2023. How can that be? Was it all that very long ago, 58 years, when we were teens, discovering ourselves, interests, friends, relationships, and doing our own thing, finding where we belong, where we wanted to do, what we were wanting to be, and it all began with divisions. Divisions by group, divisions were focused theme in high school. We were divided by academic class, Roman numeral 4 through Roman numeral number 1. I was talking about the divisions, blue and gold, so today's theme for me is blue. So good. Whether we wanted to be sports inclined or not, a common theme through all the divisions was always accomplishment. So I'm going to offer a revelation quite present in the goings-on within our class today. Unification. To me, the blue lady, seen on the screen here, embodies this theme. But how does she relate to you today, you ask? Why do I bring her up here? This work of art, residing in the Royal Ontario Museum South Asia Art Collection, was created by artist Navjot Altef. This inspirational primitive carving personifies generous qualities of all women. She inspires women to seek knowledge and to pass it on. The Blue Lady is named and inspired by a real woman named Kunti. The artist says about her, entitled informally, The Blue Lady, she never gave it a name, she's just become to be known that for centuries, women with knowledge were regarded as witches. So think of the Salem witch trials, medieval witch craze, the time between 500 AD and 1350, Joan of Arc, Indira Gandhi, Eleanor Roosevelt, Gloria Steinem, Madeleine Albright, Angela Merkel, Janet Yellen maybe, and most certainly midwives, herbalists, and any woman who gains and acts upon her knowledge. Educated women were regarded as threats to the local patriarchal ways. The Blue Lady was motivated into being by village witch trials. The men of artist Navjot's village put the woman Kunti on public display with the intentions to humiliate her, to deride her for being confident, knowledge, and proactive. The Blue Lady is made of teak, indigo, and metal. Teak is known for its incredible durability, water resistance, strength, and permanence. The deep blue in Hindu represents divinity. She sits upon an iron wine rack. Significantly, though, please do look at her hands. Backward thumb placement represents a belief in witchcraft. The Blue Lady receives knowledge and wisdom to hold it in her grasped hand, and with the open hand, she shares freely.
I love that.
Yeah. She is how I see us. Tough, kind, open, knowledgeable, confident, accomplished, forging ahead, beautiful inside and outside, and better with age. Mm-hmm. Allow yourself to be like the Blue Lady, to recognize your unique goodness, knowledge, kindness, and to share freely. Be the shoulders upon whom others stand, such as we were gifted. Energy flows during our Teatime Zoom rendezvous. It can be a very good kind of contagious and energetic unification. Carpe diem.
Thank you for that. Colleen.
That's gorgeous.
It's fascinating.
Inspiring. Yes, you are eloquent.
Thank you. I have 2 links that I will send to all, just in case you want to, look up something about her. I fell in love with her when I was there. You'll notice she's oversized, just like all of those virtues. Yeah, I think that's dynamic. So one of the things about passing on wisdom, is that somebody has to teach. So along that line, we're going to start our Zoom cameo with Patty Pratt Moriarty. Patty, would you share some of your teaching wisdom, some experiences, and tell us how you got to teaching and where? Because I know everybody will be interested in that, and maybe a little story or 2 to go along with it.
And you had warned me, do not name names, so I will not name names. Even if some of them were political and, Anyhow, I started teaching when George was sent to Vietnam in 1970 to 71. I had a new baby, and I called my mom. We were living in Lowell, Massachusetts, where George was from. And I said, Mom, could I come home? And of course, I didn't want to raise my baby around his Auntie Jean, who was living with us. It was sort of a package deal. So Tara and I moved back to wonderful Rosemary Street. And B, who took care of me when I was a little girl, took care of my Tara. Oh. And my father said, you're worrying about George too much, and you're checking the mail every single day. And if the mail doesn't have a letter from him, you are convinced that he's dead. You need to stay busy. Why don't you think about teaching? So I thought, I don't know 2 hoots about teaching, but I called my dear friend, Sister Martha Rowan, who was the head of the middle school at Stone Ridge, and she was the sister of my roommate in college, who also had introduced George to me 4 years previous. So I went into Stone Ridge and I had an interview, and she said, what do you know about teaching? And I said, honestly, not a whole lot. And she said, have you ever heard of Warner's English Grammar and Composition? Give me a little square white book.
Yep.
And I said, I think I can handle that. So my first teaching job was using a textbook, which is so different from how I ended up teaching as I progressed. So I had English Grammar and Composition. I taught 5th grade, and to this day, my children rue the day I ever learned so much about grammar, because I am so awful at correcting even politicians, newspaper people. Things just kill me. Pronoun misuse.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I got really, it turned out I was good at that. And then Megan was born in 73, so I took a year off to stay home and have a baby. And then I went back to teaching, and then Christopher was born in 78, and I took another year off to have another baby. Meanwhile, God bless B, who took care of my kids. George got out of the Army, and we were in Washington. He got a job, I think thanks to my dad, at the federal courthouse at pretrial services. And he went to law school at night. It was horrific. He would work all day and go to law school at night. And then in 1988, there was a letter on his desk that said, George, know anyone who'd be interested in this? And they were looking for a new chief of pretrial services for the entire state of Massachusetts. So George said, this sounds intriguing. So he applied, and the rest is history. He got the job. Tara was at Wellesley College. Megan was in 9th grade, and she told us in her dramatic fashion, I just want you to know you have ruined my life. And after that, and Chris was 9 years old. He was golden. So we moved to Massachusetts, and I really have to say, it's the very, very best thing that happened to us. I found my voice in teaching. I thought, I really am excellent at this. They didn't hire me at Belmont Day School because they knew my family. They didn't hire me because they felt sorry for me, because my husband was in Vietnam. They hired me for me. And it was no textbooks. It was very different. It was all hands-on, experiential learning, thematic. Lucy Calkins' writing workshop. We dealt with themes, and my big theme for a whole year was the study of China, which I immersed myself in, and so did the kids. And the school sent me to China. They learned Chinese history. They learned about the buried Chinese warriors at Xi'an, the making of the Great Wall with the Emperor Shang Chi Huangdi. They loved it. We went to Chinese restaurant and learned to use chopsticks, even though a couple of the kids only would eat white rice. But I loved every single day going to school until I didn't. And that was true in 2010. I was on Route 128, and the traffic had gotten worse and worse and worse. I loved what I was doing until that moment. It was just, there was a light bulb that went off. And I thought, I really don't find joy in this anymore. And I wanted to find joy. We were going down to surprise Tara for her 40th birthday. And she lives in Reston, Virginia. And I announced to the whole family, you know what? I'm retiring. And I don't regret a moment. George had already retired 6 years earlier, and he was the stay-at-home husband who cooked for me. And he'd say, my God, I went to 3 different grocery stores today, getting all the ingredients for Vietnamese lettuce wraps. He was exhausting himself. So as soon as I retired, we traveled and traveled and traveled. And now we can't. We both have bad backs. I've got bursitis, and we have sciatica and all these things you don't want to hear about. But we made the most of we had about 10 or 12 really good years. And we traveled all over the world. But what I love most, I thought, I don't have any visuals for you. And then I thought, this came in the mail this summer. And I always did author studies. And we read a lot of different authors, and then we used those as props for our own narrative writing. And my kids knew that, you write best by writing what's true, what's in you tell your story, not. So I wasn't a big fan of fiction. But I read a lot of books by an amazing author, Patricia Polacco. She's written a whole lot of books. And this came in the mail this June. And it's a wonderful book by Patricia Polacco called Thunder Cake. And it's teaching children how not to be afraid of thunder. And she's a great illustrator, too. And in the inside, this is what I love. I don't know if you can see it. It's, Dear Mrs. Moriarty, thank you for introducing me to storytelling and a love for reading. I still remember reading Patricia Polacco books in your class in the 3rd grade. You've made a tremendous impact on all of your students, and congratulations on your retirement. Best, Alexandra D'Souza. And honestly, I have to say, I don't remember her very well. But I thought, he remembered me. Mm-hmm. And I just have lots and lots of wonderful memories. I was looking for, and then I decided, no, it was bragging. I used to save a book of, I called teacher love letters. Anytime a parent wrote something really wonderful about me, I stuck it into my little love letter box. I think that would have been really showing off to read some of those.
I would have loved
I don't know, because I think a lot of times you might get beaten in class. You know,
But teaching is hard work. And I said to someone, if you're a good teacher, you are never, ever done. You are never fully satisfied with the prep you've done. The worst thing at Belmont Day was the report card writing. It was all strictly narrative. So one of them was the great big blank page that had the kid's name and the grade, and that was called personal growth. And one reason my teaching was never ever done was I was after school constantly taking notes on the kids, and who said something so witty that I'd have to be sure to include on their personal report. And I had one year I had triplets. Jeez. Fortunately, they were very different. But I learned, it took me a long time. You sort of make a mental template for your vast narrative report card. And you start paragraph 1 with 3 of the best adjectives you can think of to describe that child. With her enthusiasm and joy of she brings such joy to, and sometimes you have to fudge it a little bit. You know, sometimes the kid doesn't really bring a whole lot of joy to the class, but it was a really good experience. But I could never have gone right to Belmont Day with no textbooks if I hadn't started off with using very structured teaching at snow grade.
Wonderful. You know, to be able to bring out gratitude, that can be a gift.
It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I have a rule about Facebook, and that is I will only become your friend on Facebook after you have finished college. I did not want to look at all those parties and all the wispy little bikinis they were modeling. I didn't want any of that. And now I have one dear friend. In fact, we're having dinner next week. His name is Nai Ko. He was Nai Nan. Now he's Nai Ko. His father came over from China with the shirt on his back, and then he became the owner of Toyota of Wellesley. Oh. And Nai then went to Columbia and now owns Toyota of Wellesley. And I'm in the market for a new car, so I text Nai and say, would you like to come over for dinner? But what I really want is, and you need to find me a very sensible new car. I said, another Rad is fine with me, and he wrote back and said, Mrs. M, you need something a lot sportier than that, but I'm sticking with I'm not a sporty car person, so he'll find me I don't even care if it's used. We are not car people.
Okay, good job.
Okay.
All right,
I'm sorry. Thank you.
I have trouble with proper lighting in this house. A lot of our woodworking is dark, so I was testing, and this is our guest bedroom, and I inherited all of the really, really ugly family portraits. Mary Miller, you might have stayed in this bedroom when you came up for reunion.
I have to see more of it. Probably I did.
I think you did, but we have a lot of family portraits. We have a lot of family furniture because no one else in the family wanted it. And now I don't think my kids do either. But George and I like it just fine. Our kids have furniture that they don't think our furniture is comfortable, and I don't think it's all this, the L-shaped sofas that you can sink down into.
You can't get out.
Like their
Can't get
furniture.
up.
Yeah, I don't like their furniture that much either. But my little boys love my house, and they say, "Oh, I just love coming over here. What can be better than that?"
Nothing.
So our life is spent with 6 grandchildren, 2 in California, 2 in Reston, Virginia, who are both in college at James Madison University, and 2 right in Massachusetts. So we're all going skiing in Vermont. George and I are spectators in Okemo, Vermont. And my idea of heaven is when all 6 grandchildren get together.
Oh, sure.
That's pretty much our life. It's not a bad life.
It sounds like a good one. You know,
We have
I'm tickled that Anna Mae made it, and she taught the high school level as well as the elementary school level. So, Patty, she's kind of in between you and the next person, who I'm not going to say who that is yet. And let me see if I can bring Anna Mae on. I saw her again. Hey there, beautiful.
Hi.
Hi. Can you share with us
Sure.
how you got into teaching and maybe a story or two?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Can I, let me interrupt just a second. Can you hear me?
Sure.
Yeah. I just wanted to let Patty know that I taught at Stone Ridge too for one day.
Oh.
I was a substitute teacher in 7th grade English. I had no textbook. I had no lesson plan. I walked in
That's
and said,
typical.
so what do you like about writing? And we just had a conversation. It was really fun. I remember sitting on the desk, and it was a temporary fill-in. But I did teach.
And Stone Ridge, by the way, did not pay very well.
I don't think I was paid at all.
Was $5,200 for the entire year.
No way.
Oh, my
$5,200. This is in 1971.
That's better than what I got.
My granddaughters, I think, are getting, $75 an hour to babysit.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No,
thank you.
not interrupting. Free thought here. I thought I would bring on Anna Mae and then our next one, and then we could ask questions or delights and such if everybody is agreeable. So we'll bring on Anna Mae now.
Oh, all righty. Well, hi, everyone. It's been a long time. I made it.
Anna Mae, where are you living?
We live right by the Potomac in southern Maryland. We can see the Harry Nice Bridge that goes into Virginia. They just built a new one. We watched them put it up, and we watched them bomb the old one. Shook our house. Very interesting place to live. Plus, we're south of La Plata in an area called Newburgh, and it's very rural. All the children that I taught in elementary were their parents were watermen. Dads were farmers. It was really neat. They had to get up early and feed the chickens and the cows and all, take care of them. It was so much fun coming and listening to them coming from DC. It's just delightful down here. And across the river is a naval station that tests bombs on the river. And the first time I heard that, I was actually in a middle school at that time. The elementary school, which was next door, was being renovated. And I had just gotten down here, and this bomb went off, and I went, "What was that?" I was like, scared me to death in front of the class, and they said, "Oh, that's nothing, that's just Dahlgren." And I said, "Well, what is Dahlgren?" And they told me, and so anyway, but we love it down here. It's very quiet. We only have 17 homes in our little area here. We're called Morgantown Village, and we have a beach on the Potomac here, and it's just really pretty. So we're very remote, and but we love it. We've been in this house 33 years now, and when I retired, everybody wanted to know where are you moving to. I said, "We're not moving. Why would we move? We love this house." And my daughter won't let us move anyway. She said, "Mom, you are not selling that house." So, we're here and we love it, and it's like a vacation home, actually.
You went from Maryland, Stone Ridge, to college, and then you went to New York for teaching, and then you came down here, if I'm remembering correctly. Can you fill us in a little bit with a story or two?
Not exactly that timeline, but when I graduated, I went to Rockville, and I had a job at Julius West Junior High, and I taught art there, and I loved it. I was only there for 1 year, and I got engaged, and then I moved to Richmond, and I taught. And that's when I started elementary, and they gave me 2 student teachers my first year down there from VCU, and that was interesting. But I can't tell you much about Rockville because that was such a long. I was 21 years old, and those kids were like 7 years younger than I was, and they were. The oldest were 14 or 15 ninth graders, and but back then it was just so different because my daughter teaches art now in a high school down here, and she has the stories every day. But and even elementary is different too. But when I was teaching, it was fun. I loved it, and it was nice going out shopping, and I would see some of my students, and I still do. I see them everywhere now because I was at the elementary school up here for 24 years, and so a lot of them have become friends and whatnot. Then teachers
probably taught their kids.
Pardon me?
You have probably taught their kids.
Oh, I did. I taught a lot of the kids of kids.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yes. And but yes, after I got married, moved to Richmond, taught there for about 3 years, and I had 3 schools. I was a transient art teacher. They moved me around, and that was tough. I never knew where I was going. I wake up in the morning, okay, where am I going now? But anyway, and I didn't like that because I didn't get to know the kids. I wasn't with them long enough. And it was, I don't know, to me it was kind of sad. But then when I went to New York, my husband was he went to Columbia University, and so I got a job not far from there. It was within walking distance of our apartment, and so anyway, it was in an Episcopal school. Get this, there were nuns.
Wow.
Yep, there were nuns.
There were Episcopal nuns.
Yes, I was shocked. Yeah, and they're gone now. I don't think they have them anymore, from what I've heard. And but it was interesting. Sisters, and it's crazy. But it was a nice school. It was just private school like Stone Ridge, but it had boys, and and I taught a lot of actors' kids, which was interesting too, because being a private school, a lot of the actors that lived up there sent them, and it was up on the Upper West Side, And so it was good. I liked that a lot. And then, let's see, got pregnant and we moved back to Richmond, and I stayed home with my kids for 11 years. I did some subbing, and then we moved to D.C., and my kids went to the same elementary school that I went to, Janney Elementary, and the principal found out that I was a teacher, so I ended up subbing in that school. And it was so funny because I'd go into my daughter's classroom. She was in 6th grade at the time, and they all called me Anna Mae.
The students called you Anna Mae.
Yeah, they all knew me. I was like, oh well, that's fine. I don't care. But yeah, that was fun. And so then, let's see, we moved down here. Let's see. Peanut Gallery, be quiet. We moved down here. I got a teaching job right away, and I had 3 schools. And let's see, how can I tell you this? That changed the second year, and then I had 2 schools, and it was just a busy time, and then finally the 3rd year they put me at the school that's close here full time. And in the meantime, I got divorced, and I would go to the grocery store, and there was my husband to be, which I didn't know, of course, but yeah, it's a long story, but anyway, we met in the grocery store, and
In fresh produce.
She married her meat man. Get that right. She married a butcher.
It was a butcher.
I love that.
And so we ended up, we got married, and we bought this house, and we had the 4 kids, his 2 and my 2, all through their teenage and college years. It was interesting. They went up to the older one. Huh?
I said, God bless you.
Oh, it was interesting, but it was good. They're all friends. As a matter of fact, the 2 older, my daughter and Jim's son, both went to college together, and they looked out for each other. It was so cute. And Christine would tell Mark, "Don't go out with her. No, you don't want to go out." He would do the same thing for her. It was so funny. But anyway, yeah, the teaching up here was so much fun, and I loved every minute of it. I actually have students now who I keep in touch with, and a lot of them actually, because they live close by. And one guy, Ivan, big guy, comes over and he does a lot of work for us in our house now, since my husband is a little debilitated. He can't do a whole lot, but yeah, he does stuff for us, and he comes over, and last night he just comes over and sits and watches TV with us.
I love that.
Oh yeah.
How did you?
Huh?
Well, I've certainly seen a theme here between these 2. Your flexibility of location, of topic, and on the spot, because if you're going to be changing schools and no manual and whatnot, you're truly flying by the seat of your pants.
Oh, literally. Oh yeah. And when you talked about Stone Ridge paying $5,200,
Yeah.
I started out with $3,900.
Oh, I beat you.
Let's find out if the Midwest did any better. The next person is a college emeritus person, and that's Kitty Miller Green. Kitty, even though we can't see you, we know that you're there. You'd like to chime in with us?
Yes, my voice has always been considered my best feature. That's why we tune in. And remind me, I see Mary, so remind me to tell the story about Mary at the end that I told Kathleen earlier today.
I will not forget that.
Okay, now what I've had a lot more change in terms of location and expectations. I've noticed the underlying theme with a couple of us is we went to Stone Ridge, we went to college, but we were not career oriented. So most of us have gone into these careers later on. Because a lot of us, like me, got married at 23 and had 4 children. I want to start out by telling you how surprised I was, how exciting a career you could have in the place called Sioux City, Iowa in the Midwest. I'm going to tell you honestly, when I moved here, I thought I had been sent to Siberia. And I was married and I had a baby and I was married to a lawyer, and I found my initial arrival here to be difficult for an adjustment. So I had an undergraduate degree, and as time went on, after I had the 3rd child, I went back to graduate school, and I finished at the University of South Dakota, and I did what a lot of women...
Kitty, can I just ask you, how did you get to Iowa? Was it your job?
I got married. I met a guy when I was in college. He went to Georgetown Law School. He was from Sioux City, Iowa, and I moved out here when I was 23, or 24. Okay, so the prospects here initially didn't look very promising, but it's turned out to be very exciting in a couple of interesting ways. For example, as I speak today, Iowa, politically, is probably one of the most interesting places in the United States. Had both Democratic and Republican precinct caucuses here since the late 1960s, of which I have attended every single one of them. This year, the Democrats are not going to do it, only the Republicans. So I have seen every single Republican you have ever heard of who has actually come to Sioux City. Now, this has been going on now for 40 years. So when you teach at a college and you have those kinds of opportunities for involvement in things like history and national politics, it turned out to be a lot more exciting than I ever imagined it would be. Back to the curriculum, a couple of you picked up on not having curriculum. I want to tell you, in college, there's no such thing as a curriculum. You put together every single college course you ever teach from scratch. So a couple of things that were exciting, at least initially, were things like women's studies courses, where you taught women in U.S. politics, where you taught women in U.S. history, courses like the history of the American West, those kind of very interesting kind of courses I was able to teach. So I found, surprisingly, especially after background we all have in Stone Ridge, was not the most liberating experience of my life intellectually. The thing they did, I thought was exciting, was they taught us how to read, they taught us how to write, and they taught us how to think. Very dangerous activity for a young woman. So you come equipped to go to school, college, and graduate school with a tremendous ability to learn. Right? You can write, you can read, you can analyze. So it turned out, college teaching just turned out to be the most imaginable, liberating experience you can imagine. And another thing, when you talked about we taught little people, grade school and middle school, you get parents that are appreciative. When you teach college students, you get to see real end results. Because by the time you're teaching a college student, they have a pretty good idea that you're giving them something valuable. You know, a little kid's nice and they're cute, but they don't understand it. So the really big thing you get out of college teaching is the students mostly that you teach appreciate you and you're able to mentor them, especially young women. Like, we're not going to name names, but over the years, taught a lot of young women to become lawyers. I've taught young men that are judges now in this area of the country. So you get to have a real positive impact on the developing of people, because by the time I see them, they're 18 years old. And they're pretty, they're still malleable. Not very, but some. So I found teaching in college to be fabulous. And I just taught, actually I was 72 years of age when I stopped teaching. And it's provided a lot of other opportunities. I just wanted to mention, you get to travel when you teach. I've taught in Italy. I've taken students to Guatemala. I've gone to Puerto Rico. So when you teach on the college level, you get to travel with students. And I remember Stone Ridge, they always try to control our social behavior. one thing I learned from Stone Ridge is you cannot control people's social behavior. The more you try to control the social behavior, the worse they get. So what you learn is when they're 18, 19, you're dealing with college students, you set parameters, but you understand that if you try to be really strict with them, it's not going to fly. It's not going to happen. So you have to work in that particular way. So I don't know what else, because I don't want to take up too much time and talk, because we can all get into a good conversation. Another thing that college teaching provides is a lot of civic opportunities. For example, because you're a college professor, they ask you to serve on boards and commissions all the time. Like you get to serve on the State Historical Board, you get to serve on the Iowa Commission on the Status of Women, because, they always try to bring people in they hope will add something to what they're trying to do. So it's not only opened up professional opportunities. And another thing I found in Sioux City particularly is hardly anybody had done any serious local research on women. We're kind of a group of people that they haven't always paid a lot of attention to. So it provided tremendous research opportunities because nobody had done it. And the East Coast, I'm sorry, every time you find a cool woman, there's 18 master's theses on her, right? Wow. This has been going on for decades. But you get out here and hardly anybody has examined a lot of those kinds of things. Okay, we want funny stories. I'll do two funnies and then we'll talk. My favorite funny was, how do you deal with a cell phone in a class? Okay, I've gone through the whole gamut. I was still, by the way, using blue books when I retired from teaching, to the horror of most students. Cell phones were introduced to the class, and it just was very difficult to decide how you were going to handle this. And so I had a problem initially. The cell phone would go off in class, and I'd turn to the person whose cell phone went off, and I'd say, "How is your patient in intensive care doing? Are they doing okay?" And the kid would look at me like, "What is the matter with you?" I said, "Well, why would a cell phone go off in the middle of class? What's the emergency?" Okay, so that didn't work, okay. So then I decided I had a 3-prong punishment, because I always learned punishments need to be humiliating but a little bit funny. That's what I like about some punishments. So the first choice was you could do an act of physical prowess, something physically interesting. I'll tell you some of the horror stories of that. Or you could sing or recite a piece of poetry, or you could bring treats to the next class. So what happened over and over was students it would happen, and all the boys, to a person, I taught a lot of varsity football players in college, they would all try an act of physical prowess, something ridiculous. And when I finally stopped, I tried to control this, as one of the cheerleaders got up in the middle of the class and started doing backflips across the room. I said, this is maybe going over the top. But then they'd sing Barney songs. It was one thing after another. The point is, after about 2 of these incidents in class, the cell phone stopped going off. It worked. It worked marvelously. Okay. My finishing story, I told Kathleen to Deb, and dying to tell Mary this story for 50 years. Okay, Mary. Mary, Karen, and I have the same last name. As you remember, I'm a Miller, she's a Miller. We're 2 girls with dark hair. We both went to the same very small graduating class, and her father ran for vice president. So frequently, socially in Maryland, go out, I'd be confused. They weren't sure who was Bill Miller's daughter. Was it Mary Karen, or was it Kitty? Who knows? So I was used to a little bit of confusion my senior year. I didn't take it as anything serious. Okay. So I go to the American College of Switzerland, and I have a boyfriend, a very wonderful Swiss boyfriend, French-speaking Swiss boy. And I told him all about my background, and we're sitting having a drink one day, and he looks up at me and he says, "Kitty, you never told me your father ran for vice president." I said, "Roger, what?" I said, "My father never ran for vice president." Well, he says, "I'm teaching a woman from Maryland, a Mrs. Lockwood, who tells me that your father ran for vice president." I said, Mrs. Lockwood has again confused me with Mary, right? She said, "A Miller girl from Stone Ridge," and she immediately assumed it was Mary, not me. And to this day, I couldn't believe that tale in 1966 followed me to the top of a mountain in Switzerland. Mary, I had to tell you, that same confusion, it stopped now. But in my senior year,
I never heard that. That is
no, and I said, I got to tell Mary that story someday, that somebody still had me thinking I was Mary Karen Miller at the top of some mountain in Switzerland.
I am so sorry.
That's great.
No, Mary. I'd like to suggest, I said this to Kathleen earlier, that some of us share now a little bit of our college experiences. Anything really rip-roaring fun in college.
Absolutely. I think that's a great segue. Please, I'd love you all to sort of chime in. Somebody raise their hand if they have something to say about your college days. And it can be good or bad or something indifferent.
I actually have a couple questions. Can I do that?
Yes.
I don't want to get away from Kitty's suggestion, but I had one question for Anna Mae, and then I had sort of several questions all mulled together for Patty. But it has to do, maybe this is just getting too serious, but I mean, I think it's because I care so much about education, and I've covered it as a reporter in so many different ways. One question I had for Anna Mae is, every time there are budget cuts in education, arts is always the first thing to go. And I was curious whether you ever faced that.
Oh my gosh. Everywhere I taught, except in New York, they had everything that I needed there. But especially in Virginia, when I was in Richmond, I had to scramble for paper and just drawing supplies. And even when I came here, I would go to a printing office that's not too far away and ask if they had any scrap paper that they were getting rid of. It's been really tough, and my daughter's going through it now. She barely has any supplies, and she's teaching these high school kids, and it's a challenge. But she's making it out.
Did they ever scrap art altogether?
Pardon me?
Did they ever scrap art altogether?
They talked about it. They did at one time, and actually there was my daughter did. She did her student teaching with me. The school that she was actually a graphic designer for 7 years, and then she called me up and she said, "Mom, I want to be an art teacher." So she ended up getting her degree and then her master's. But I don't know. This whole thing with art and music has been iffy for a while, and it was. Somebody told her. I'm sorry. Somebody told her not even to go into art.
But I was just going to say, and then I just want to ask Patty a question. I mean, there have been so many studies about how important art is for the brain, and so it's just sort of heartbreaking how the arts have suffered in the school system. They always fund, sports, but art and music.
Oh, yeah.
And at my school, I would include also drama. My kids did drama, and each class put on a play every year. Really wonderful.
That's great. Yeah.
Let me ask you one thing, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm just getting too, esoteric about this, but just knowing over our lifetime how educational philosophy has changed so much. Remember in our days grammar was important, and we diagrammed sentences, and we used to have script writing, and now they don't do that anymore because computers have been introduced. And even when I think about challenged kids, there was always the philosophy, let's mainstream them, let's put them, in separate classrooms. So the whole philosophy of with every new education secretary, we got new ideas about education. So I'm just curious, Patty, in a nutshell, if all of that affected you as you went through your teaching career.
My teaching career I was teaching the creme de la creme, the elite. None of that affected me at all. It was my kids, I'm embarrassed to say, were so entitled. And if I needed any supplies, all I had to do was say something. And we had a head of school who was trying to save money. Sarah Levine. She had a reputation. And in order to save money, she thought we were all wasting paper. So she said that each teacher was entitled to, I think, 1 ream of paper per, I don't know, semester or something. And you were supposed to put your own paper into the copy machine. And then when you finished copying, you took your own paper out of it was absurd. Well, I was teaching the head of maintenance's daughter one year, and I come into my classroom and there were 5 reams of paper left for me anonymously. I think I had said sarcastically to him, well, I guess it means I can't ever assign homework if I can't give out paper. Well, boom. I also found this same gentleman would greet me in the parking lot, and Lenny Corso was his name. He has since died way too young. And he would he would carry my books to my classroom.
Oh.
He was, good memories of him. But Belmont Day and Stone Ridge both had very, very entitled parents.
Did you still continue to teach grammar and script writing and things like that a lot of students?
I did correct grammar, but they were allowed to do free writing, and it was called creative spelling. So that if I could read it, it was okay. But it was very invented spelling. It's kind of the way first graders write, phonetically. So somebody would talk about their next, N-E-C-K, next door neighbor. And I knew exactly they were talking about their next door neighbor, not a next door, but, things like that. But we were not hung up on spelling or punctuation, or the kids edited each other's work. They'd find a writing partner and read to the other person. And so that cut down on my work a lot by having the kids do things for them, for each other.
Anyway, I don't want to take up, other people may want to contribute. Kitty, I just loved your stories. And you have so many interesting insights about teaching at the college level. I love the story. I substitute taught, quite a while. And the cell phone thing was a big problem. So thank you for that funny story.
I want to add one thing about education. And Mary, you'll know what I'm talking about too. I didn't realize, I'm in Colorado. I didn't realize that they no longer teach civics. Do you guys know that?
It's called government.
Nope. And not here. I've gone to meetings about this, and they don't teach civics, so kids don't even know. So what people have been doing is gradually adding in civics with guest lecturers, so they learn about government, because it looks to me like a lot of people have no idea about civics or government.
Yeah.
And so obviously it hasn't been taught because they don't have any idea what government is or how it works.
Actually, some of the people who are governing us don't have other idea.
That's who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Many of the people who govern us don't have any idea what the government is, how it works, or what civics is. So when you mentioned education, I don't teach education, but I pay attention, and watch the news and then go to some meetings about it. And it was shocking to me that it had to be guest lecturers that came in and taught high school students about government. And they're trying to put it back in schools. And I thought, back, because the ones that didn't get it, as you just said, Patty, are now ruling us.
What about geography? We used to teach.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another thing that kids don't know.
They don't know
that anymore.
Can I make a comment on what she just said? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'd like to address that. Once upon a time, there was a world in academia. I'm talking about liberals and conservatives who went to the same colleges and universities and all agreed on the ugly word called the canon. We all agree on certain things. What the Constitution sort of meant, what the founding institutions of this country, everybody was on the same page. What has happened, which you're hoping that if we brought it back to the schools, it would be work. What has happened is that the people who know perfectly well what the institutions are of this country don't care. And they have decided that they create their own narrative, whatever that narrative is. It can be on either side of the spectrum. There once was a much greater consensus about what you're talking about. What is government? What is the purpose of this government? What are the founding institutions of this government? We all sort of agreed. Close. But now, I mean, some of the statements made about the Constitution are so outrageous that the person who's making them could have never even heard of the document.
Yeah.
Mary, you cover stuff.
They know what is democracy? People don't, even now, people don't know what is democracy.
No. They don't want democracy.
No.
If they know it, even if you tell them what it is, they look and say, I don't want that.
But I also think some people, I live in a poorer area, and I have to tell you that there are lots of people who don't know. Okay?
Oh, I agree.
They don't know what it is. They don't understand it. So they weren't, I mean, if they had been taught it, they would have some inkling. So my worry is, yes, I understand there's people that know and then say, screw it. No offense. But I think there's plenty of people who I know who don't know. They don't know what are they doing when they redistrict all those places? Gerrymandering. I mean, I've talked many people. They've never heard of the word gerrymander. Okay, that's a very meaningful word. So they don't know. So when they hear something that's argued about and it uses these words, not all big words, they don't have any idea. So they vote for something like that's the loudest or whatever. And that's scary to me that they don't know. And I think part of that's ignorance, not maliciousness, but ignorance. And I think we missed something there in 8th grade, high school, just teaching what it is and why it's good. You know, that's my point.
I agree.
I think a lot of people are very selfish also. They want their agenda and there's no discussion. I notice that it's my way or get the hell out of my face. There's not always, we used to call it in real estate, equal degree of dissatisfaction. You know, a little bit of give, a little bit of take, and then you come up with a compromise. That means it was worked together. And we just, that seems to be a lost concept. It's their agenda, each individual in many cases.
Can I add something? This really affects a college professor more than anybody else. And I'll give you one of our most popular books now is The Death of Expertise. And we have watched this play out in American politics for years now, is you bring somebody in from Johns Hopkins who knows all about disease, you put him on television, he or she explains what the problem is, and half of the media or people disregard. This is a person with a PhD in medicine, and you don't even have to listen to them. You just listen to some pundit. So what has happened, you see it in college and you see it in the media all the time, is the people that were used to at least be able to come forward, you know, with some respectability and say, well, you know, I've studied this for years and I'd like to add my perspective on this. People now just go, oh, who cares? Yeah. So a lot of what you're seeing in thing is a real negative attitude about expertise in education. It's not valuable.
So, Kitty, have you noticed over your years of teaching that the kids who come to you at 18, are they less prepared over the years? Have you found, like when we talk about jettisoning, you know, grammar and civics and a lot of that, I don't know, we just keep talking about our education system in such decline over the years. So how have you seen it?
It's a problem when you go to Stone Ridge, Country Day School of the Sacred Heart, and get, like we talked about, a privileged, high-caliber education, and then you go to college and get the same thing. And then you get, I live in Sioux City, Iowa, and I get a fairly normal middle-class clientele, mostly all of them from public schools, and they run the gamut. But what I find now is college students are not as receptive to knowledge as they were when I started teaching. Does that make sense?
What a shame.
I was younger. I was 30 years old, 35 years old, and these whippersnapper kids were very respectful. And I've taught some kids over the years. I don't agree with two things they think about politics. And I've never had a problem with them because there was always this respect, this deference, and this give and take. Now, as time has gone on, that is gone. They know as much as I do, but my God, they Googled some. I mean, it's alarming. If you were in higher education, you would be very surprised at the attitudes. Like, back to Mary's, to answer your question specifically, no, they're not particularly better prepared, but they think they are. You know?
What's the answer? I just don't know. You know, you look at how these kids from China, of course, those kids, you know, education is such a high priority, but that's about all they have in their life. You know, when some of them commit suicide, taking, you know, if they flunk the entrance exam to get to university or something. I mean, I believe in a balance in life, you know, but I just don't know. It just seems our education system has declined over the years.
And it's declined in a way that's going to have a terrible class impact in the next generation. In other words, certain people are going to be able to go to very high-quality educations, get high-quality educations, and go to high-quality colleges and universities. A lot of the other people are not. And they're going to be shut out because the education system will not serve them as well. And by the way, it was like that when we were teenagers. I was at Stone Ridge Country Day School of the Sacred Heart because I wasn't going to go to Gaithersburg High School. Okay? You know, we were sent in from the country because we could not go to public schools.
And what do you think about the argument that not everybody needs to go to college?
Yeah, right.
They need an education, but they don't need a certain type of college education. But again, I hear this from everybody. Most all of you have college educations. When we went to college as young women, we had the greatest advantage in the world is that we saw a college education as something that where we could develop our minds, we could major in useless activities like French. We could do those things because college was considered a rite of passage, turning you into this fine woman, or I forget the word, lady, that we needed to become. So, remember, seriously, we got advantages in terms of our attitude towards our college education. Wasn't that we were looking for a career to make a living, right? We were going to school because we liked art. We took majors because we liked history. And now everybody's so focused on career. You know, what job can I get when I get out of school? So, no, not everybody gets benefits from college, but they also lose something they'll never get if they don't go to college, if that makes any sense. They'll never read a philosopher, right? They'll never read any serious literature. Of course, in political science, what?
I want to stop you just for a second because, again, I live in a different neighborhood, but I have a guy that lays carpet who finished 9th grade, and he's traveled to Russia as a kid 8 times because he wanted to learn about Russia and Russians. He reads all the news. If I talk to him, he's 70-something. If I talk to him about something, he knows about everything. So I think college is a good deal, a good idea. But I do think there are other people who are fascinating people.
Oh, I do too. No, I'm not saying.
Yeah, and I know other people around here who I just talked to my mechanic who's from Mexico, and he just finished. I don't think he finished high school. He's talking about some bills that are federal bills, and he said people don't understand this particular bill. He looked it up for me on the computer and went through all the details that will affect his job if it's passed in detail. And I'm thinking there are so many people who are self-learners. As you said, there's some that aren't. But I love talking to people that have done all this on their own. I mean, they just look stuff up, or they read, or... So I'm cautious about generalizing about that way because I've met so many that learned just for voting. They look up every issue.
And the
College people go
I'm in a world, and I've been in a world in Iowa forever, where the majority of people I live around do not have college education.
Yes.
Exactly. I'm not living in suburban Maryland or Spring Hill. I'm not living there. I'm living in Iowa. And so I have been around that, which are phenomena, since I've been here.
And the other thing, there are so many jobs that don't require a college degree, like laying carpet or being an electrician or this or that or whatever. Even people who, work in restaurants. But we need those people. We need those people to make the economy run. So while I think, college is the ultimate, you know what I'm saying? There are so many who can go to trade school and fill jobs that the country needs that might not need a college education.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just that we have some issues in Iowa, like with child labor. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Obnoxious thing I have ever seen passed in the legislature in my life.
Well, you have meatpacking plants too, right?
Meatpacking, an incredibly nasty, dangerous job.
Yeah, horrible.
It's an entry job for immigrants. By the way, not an entry job for 2 and 3 generations. A lot of these entry jobs are a Mexican who comes here and meatpacks, but his son will get a better paying job. And his grandson will even get it. It's seen as a way to start because it pays. So in Iowa, we're having people, I don't know how to describe the attitude is, by allowing this change in child labor laws, their motivation is to get more workers into packing plants. But if you take a 14 or 15 or 16-year-old, mostly boys, into a packing plant, he's not going to be getting a high school education. We're not talking about trade school. We're not even talking about anything. We're talking about shutting them down from an education at 16.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the unforeseen consequences of some of these new ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, this is really such a good hot topic.
Well,
it sure
we
is.
can talk about something, like this, because it's nice to get all over the country, and share with people. What do you think's going on in Colorado and Maryland and Virginia? Where's Ellen? Is Ellen still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Now, Ellen, where do you live?
Where am I?
Where do you live? Yeah.
Oh, Bethesda.
Oh, okay. You didn't get very far.
No.
Well, she's a little bit of a crossbreed because she's got her dad's home in a very old country style environment that has interesting
very rural.
So she spends her time between the two places. We had some obstacles for this one, but it's not one cause. But I think they're great topics, and I'm so pleased to bring everybody together. So let me take a screenshot. Ready? Here we go. Everybody looks adorable. All right, hang on while I do my little magic here. 3, 2, and 1. Got it.
Good job. Well, I have one question on the topic. And I know Patty kind of serendipitously fell into this wonderful career. But Anna Mae's gone, but Kitty, did you always want to be a teacher?
No, not particularly. Honestly, I was like most of us. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like most of you. When I was a young woman, I wasn't focused on having a career. Looking back on it, I wish I had thought about that a little more. I would never tell a daughter what I was told.
How many of you have a traditional, old-fashioned traditional family where it was the father who was the breadwinner and the mother was the stay-at-home mom? Because that has changed dramatically over the years. But that was what I never thought I would work. Oh, God. And then I taught for 36 years.
Yeah, I know, and I've taught 40, yeah.
And my daughter, my oldest daughter, was the stay-at-home mom until her kids were older, and then she used her law degree. But for years, she was the stay-at-home mom, and she did the carpools and both my son and his wife and my other daughter and her husband, they both are full-time working, and they're all so busy.
Yeah.
And that's today's reality.
Yeah, when I was 23 years of age, I had my first child. And when I started teaching, I found out in 1970, only 23% of the women in this country, or 24, who were married with a baby were working full-time. So women working with small children was not the norm except in the working class. And it was not at all common above that. And by the time I had my last child, 60 to 70% of all women with an infant under 5 was working. That's a dramatic change in just a generation of that. Yeah. So we were that transitional remember, we were the transitional generation. Like when we applied to college, none of us could go to an Ivy League school. You had to go to a women's college. And, if you wanted to go to law school, they might take you in on a 10% quota, right? So, I mean, and then just a few years after we graduated from college, I think the turnaround was about 1972. All of a sudden, the Ivy Leagues opened up. All of a sudden, law schools started taking women. They started taking women in graduate schools and in all these areas where, 6 years before, you would have been an oddity.
Well, I went to Georgetown Foreign Service because they didn't let women into the college.
Yes, right. One of my friends from college went to American University Law School, and there were 4 women in her class in 1970. Women in American University Law School class. I just, how that has changed.
And in terms of society, where you have the 2 parents working all the time, that's a huge change.
And it's a little more of a problem than a lot of people like to think, because it's, I'm not trying to point out the obvious, but we don't have a particularly strong child care system in this country. So working, I mean, obviously understating, we make it more difficult for parents of young children than it needs to be. We make it more expensive, and we make it more difficult.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, back to the teaching part. All I did was work for the government, but I taught CCD classes at St. Mary's for about 12 years.
Oh, I didn't know that. Tell us more.
And I'm glad I did not become a teacher. I admire the teachers. That's hard work, really hard work.
You had a very interesting position. A lot of people don't know what you did. You weren't simply a secretary. Could you elaborate on this a little bit?
Well, I guess it was really called like executive assistant gatekeepers for directors of NIH. And I worked in several different places at NIH. I switched jobs to get promotions. And I started as a GS3 and retired at the top of a GS14. So I did a lot of jumping around. And I ended up, the last job I had was working in the NIH Executive Secretariat, which is the office that handles all of the director of NIH and deputy director's correspondence and all the congressional mail.
You were probably privy to a lot of stuff before it came out.
Proofreading and diagramming sentences in my head.
Yeah.
I still think, don't they know the difference between subjective case and nominative? Object of a preposition.
No, and I read something that's sent over for the director of NIH to sign. and I'm reading it, and I was like, there's not even a verb in this sentence.
Yeah. Could be grammatically
Stupid stuff.
correct.
Yeah, stupid stuff. But, oh well.
So I did a little, I'll just tell you a couple of things. I did a bit of a stint as a substitute teacher. Oh my God. And it was like middle school. The elementary kids were great. The middle school, oh dear, that was difficult. And it was a primarily African-American middle school right here. And I remember this one girl would never stop talking, never. I finally took her by the arm and took her up to the front of the classroom and said, "You're going to sit here for the classroom." Oh my gosh, she whipped around and said, "I can report you for what is that, abuse or something, physical abuse," by taking her by the arm. You know how that's become such a big deal now, you are not allowed to touch the kids or anything. Anyway, that terrified me. Another time, I had my wallet stolen. Will kept saying to me, "Why do you keep doing this? You lose money on this." Because once, another time when I substitute taught, I had to run home for something and I'm racing back again, and I got stopped by the police and got a ticket. So that's when Will is like, my husband, "Why are you doing this? You lose money substitute teaching. Your wallet's stolen, you get a speeding ticket." But then the last straw, I quit substitute teaching for the school system, and I got involved. I got trained to be with communities in school, which is tutoring, like separate kids. So I'm assigned to this. She was just the nastiest kid, and I was a really good substitute teacher because I could bring in, all information about the world and traveling and all this stuff. And she just was not interested. I had to go retrieve her one time from the football field because she didn't come to the classroom for the tutoring. And so anyway, I don't know what happened, but apparently I used a bad word, and I don't know what it was, hell or something or other. I get a call from the head of the program who goes, "Mrs. James, I'm sorry, we can't use you anymore." Because you used a bad word, with the students. And, oh, God, all right.
Oh, God.
Look, I really respect your rules and regulations, but, I said, you need to have your kids respect the volunteer time that your tutors put into this as much as you expect us to respect the students, So I think substitute teaching is not my thing. So thank you to you all who do
It's
it.
hard, no matter.
It's very hard.
Because it's not your own group of kids. And I think kids in classrooms make it a joke. Let's torment the substitute teacher.
Oh, God, yeah. I know. Anyway.
I've talked to some of our classmates that have said certain teachers that were at school they would pick on. So, Patty, you're spot on there. I must have had my head in a bag. I didn't recognize that. But
you mean of our class at Stone Ridge?
Yeah, I had no idea we were paying teachers so poorly. I have the impression that a number of parents send their kids to school and expect the teachers to socialize them, to educate them, to teach them manners, to teach them how to work a checkbook, how to write checks, how to buy groceries. All these things that our parents have taught us or we've picked up over time. It's like they just don't think. Even in the store, do you remember you used to pay a $5 bill and you'd buy something for $4.99 and you'd give them a $5 bill plus 1 penny? And I mean, you were due back 1 penny. They don't count anything to you. They just give you what the register says.
Yes.
That's a poor example. I guess I should have said, like $3.98 or something, But they don't know to say 99, 4, and 5 makes $5. They cannot do this. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, each of you, for coming today. And Ellen and I Mary, maybe we have some homework to do on this next newsletter. It's just always too short. Ain't no way this is going to be an hour in and out. I love you all, and I'm so grateful for your friendship.
Thank you so much
all your
for all
help.
the work you put into gathering us.
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love seeing you each, and I'm so grateful to call you all friends. Thank you.